Hello and a warm welcome everyone to the latest episode of the AI Edge podcast presented by Leena AI. Joining us today as a guest, we have Mr. Alim Dhanji, the Chief Human Resource Officer at TD SYNNEX. Thank you so much for joining us today, Alim.
My pleasure, Edith, and congratulations on Leena HR. Really exciting to hear about all that you've done. I'd love to get into it. My role here at TD SYNNEX, as you noted, is to be Chief HR Officer, and I look at overseeing the overall global HR strategy. What I'm really focused on is enabling leadership excellence, fostering a culture of high performance, scaling our organization and our capabilities. We're very acquisitive, leveraging innovation, of course, to support business growth. And in this sense, really into future of work and thinking about how AI evolves the way we work.
Amazing, Alim. Thank you so much for being on with us today. And quickly, can you talk to us about what the company TD SYNNEX does for our audience so that there's more context as we go deeper in the conversation?
Yeah, it's one of those companies that is on the Fortune 100, which most people would not have heard of.
Exactly.
But it's a very large company. We've got around nearly 24,000 coworkers globally, and our mission is really to connect the IT ecosystem, and it enables our partners and vendors to really unlock growth and deliver cutting-edge solutions to more than 150,000 customers that are across 100 countries. So it's a really exciting time, I think, for our industry in technology, because technology is driving so much change and societal and business transformation. So really excited to be here.
Absolutely, Alim. So let's get started. So in your personal experience, how might Gen AI be leveraged to enhance employee experience and well-being, especially in roles with high burnout risks?
Yeah, so look, I think Gen AI tools, like chatbots that I know you're quite familiar with, or virtual assistants, they can provide 24/7 support, right, for our coworkers, and they can answer questions just in time. They could be streamlining onboarding. They could guide career development, and especially with the next generations, who have grown up with consumer grade experiences, be it Uber or Airbnb. I think it's important for organizations to provide that always on, anytime support. So that's one way. But I think from a well-being perspective, I do believe that there's great potential for AI to monitor ongoing employee sentiment, and that could be through engagement surveys. Certainly, we're doing that, or also proactively flagging out burnout risks, because they could analyze patterns in workload and feedback. And I think that providing this level of rich data to HR professionals and analysis at scale and in record time, I think that is a big unlock for us to be able to provide better mental health support. And then finally, I think you can also apply predictive analytics to offer more personalized recommendations for wellness and programs or career paths, which I think for us helps us to reinforce employee well-being.
I think that makes a lot of sense, Alim. Interestingly, like when I get into conversations with a lot of CXOs, I look at it the exact way that you're saying. So the framework I use is, I say, okay, if you look at the time and work, if you do a time and work analysis of the HR team members of your own team, right? Let's figure out what's the lowest value work they do and free them of that, so they can actually spend time doing more, right? And you'll actually realize that if you take the lowest value work that the HR team or the IT team or the finance, any of the support functions do, it actually has a very big impact on employee experience. It's kind of what you said, but in a flipped out different way, where you said, hey, any support that an employee needs, from onboarding or any help desk, as you said, should basically go away, so that the employee experience goes up, and you also make sure that your HR professionals can spend time doing things that matter most, like you said, being personalized, doing personalized career plans for your people, of course, aided with AI there as well. So
Yeah,
so
I think that the at scale and timely aspect is so important. The traditional way of doing an engagement survey, I remember when I started my career in HR, at that point it was even paper based. So I'm kind of aging myself, but you would get back comments and it would take weeks, if not months, for the HR team to go through comments and then black out whatever is not appropriate. Now, I mean, we just completed our engagement survey and that was to 24,000 people. We got 19,000 comments.
wow.
And we can in real time understand from a word cloud, but also do sentiment analysis and do all kinds of demographic analysis to really determine how are people thinking. And so our HR professionals are now enabled to drive real intervention and business support. So I think that's just one example of how AI is liberating HR people.
Amazing. I love the insight overall that, going from having to read 19,000 comments to actually just getting all of that analysis on a click of a button is actually a huge leap which AI has already allowed us, and that's how it's already helping, our teams today. Moving on from experience and well-being, let's talk about. I know you talk a lot about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. How do you think AI can help there? Like, is there anything you've seen already work, or is there anything that you are looking forward to experiment with?
Yeah, look, there's both an exciting aspect of that, and then there's a risky aspect of that. I think the exciting part of it is that AI can now analyze job descriptions. It can analyze promotions, promotion requests, performance evaluations. And I think, again, doing it at scale is what's challenging sometimes. But if you have a system that can do this at scale and look at many different transactions or submissions, you can then start to identify and mitigate that bias, right? It's these type of tools that can help anonymize those candidate profiles and improve fairness at the same time. However, there are risks, and I think it's important to stress the importance of ensuring AI algorithms, are built on diverse sets of data, and that helps us, avoid replicating this systematic biases. Also, I think, we've also heard AI can hallucinate. And so it can be plausible on one hand, but not always factual. So making sure that the context is there, we have data to train AI, we have steps for validation and verification. These are all important. And I think that's for us at TD SYNNEX, the vigilance of maintaining ethical AI practices is really important.
I think that makes a lot of sense, Alim. I have a follow-up though. So I was having this conversation recently with a CHRO, and he went and said that if you think about it, human recruiters, if you use the data that human recruiters generated to train a system, to train an AI, it'll definitely be biased, because human recruiters, unfortunately, there are a lot of biases that we're not even able to identify ourselves, right? So how do you protect an algorithm just of the human bias that is in the data, which is like probably not even parameterized to be able to be evaluated? Like, for example, and this is a very interesting story. An AI model actually started to get biased on it was a resume parsing AI model. It started getting biased on pin codes, address pin codes, right? Like, that's something probably humans or subconsciously would be doing something. They fed that data and into the AI, and it started doing it. So there are things that we as humans don't even know we are subconsciously putting into data. So is that something you've thought about? Is there a framework we can leave for our audience to think about this?
Yeah, like one of the things that I'm also on my own learning journey about AI, I feel like we are scratching the surface on what possibilities there are. I think the framework that I would be most comfortable with right now is that it's a AI and human relationship. It's not sort of left to just one. AI is going to help us manage things at scale and do things with greater consistency, perhaps more analytically. But there are certain variables and levels of assessment around empathy and consideration and nuances that right now humans can do better. And who knows how that will continue to evolve with generative AI. But for now, um, for us, we are making sure that we're being a little bit more vigilant there and having the combination of human and AI.
That makes a lot of sense, Alim. So you're basically saying the way to think about it, it's never going to be like right now. At least we can't trust them 100%. The AI systems in anything essentially, and we want to always have a human in the loop kind of a approach, especially when it comes to sensitive things like resume parsing, etc. I think I like that approach. I see a lot of leaders following that. At this point, if you look at the low order stuff like tickets and queries and all of that, you should automate all of that away already. But I agree. I think when it comes to sensitive matters like benefits, or as you said, resume parsing, or even anything to do with pay, I think human in the loop is the right framework to think of, at least for the foreseeable future. um,
Agreed.
that makes sense. Changing gears, let's talk about a very important and extremely talked about topic today. So the the workforce is going to go through rapid change thanks to Gen AI, right? Like the roles are going to get redefined, and that's already happening in our company. I'm sure you, as a tech organization, that's already happening in yours too. So as an HR leader, how do you think, or how are you thinking about preparing your employees for a future where AI is ubiquitous? Like, what's the communication? How are you, preparing them? Are there specific skills or competencies that you're pushing them towards, or saying that, hey, the workforce of tomorrow should have these specific skills and competencies, given that AI is going to do a lot of grunt work for everyone across all departments?
Yeah, we're leading into this quite heavily because we feel that it's going to change the nature of our work, all 24,000 people. But at the same time, also how we can leverage AI to deliver that legendary customer experience that we want to provide and continue to be innovating. And so on one hand, I think it's important to involve our coworkers early in the journey. There's a lot about demystifying AI and also about how it augments rather than replaces human roles. And so for me, even starting with my own team, my global HR team, it was about taking them through a journey that I went through not too long ago, because I was in denial. I'm like, this is just the next trend. It's going to go away. It's not. And then I started playing around with ChatGPT. And then I realized one of the things I hate doing the most in life is writing a job description. But you can go to ChatGPT. I want a job description for this role, for this type of company. Within matter of seconds, you've got something fairly intelligent, 70-80%, and then you can ask it to rewrite on a certain tone.
Yep.
And you can get it right down to like 90-95%. And that would normally take an hour and a half to write, and not a pleasurable hour and a half. So I started using different types of AI platforms a lot more just through experimentation. So I'm taking my own sort of micro example and shared it with my team, and we created a hackathon. And we time boxed it for 72 hours, and we asked them to play around with it, friendly competition amongst the team. And I was amazed that within 3 days, we got over 100 use cases. Some of them are trivial, and then some are pretty cool that could really change the way we even think about organizing HR. But I wasn't actually looking for that silver bullet. Great if we find one, but what I was looking for is experimentation, learning about AI, understanding how it changes our work, and getting more comfortable. And so I would encourage leaders to encourage experimentation and provide that psychological safety for people to start learning and get comfortable with AI.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Alim, do you want to mention a few things that came out during the hackathon, like any interesting use cases for HR teams?
Yeah, one of them was actually quite cool. And he created a we use an internal bot called Lara, not Leena, but Lara. But and he created his own sort of GPT, which answered the most often question he gets. So he's in compensation, and it is about job evaluation. So he found a way to make that faster. So a submission would come in, goes
Yeah,
through Leena, or not Leena, Lara, and it would assign a score to it. Now, I got a bit anxious about it. This like ChatGPT helps him get to 80%. He still, as a human, going to look at it and make
yep,
sure that we are sizing it. But hey, if you can take your hours worth of work down to 15 minutes, then
absolutely.
power to you. And then you can figure out what you're going to do to reallocate that 45 minutes to do more valuable work. So that's one example. Lots of examples came in through recruitment, all the level one type of work that I know Leena takes care of really quickly and easily. Lots of that type of activity that we're now prioritizing. One other thing I would say is that we have a internal governance team that includes a number of different stakeholders: legal, risk, IT, HR is at the table. And every time there's a use case, it gets presented. And then we discuss, make sure that we've got the right perspectives, and then we prioritize it for development if we're developing it internally, or we go external if we're buying the product. But I
Absolutely.
think that helps us get funding and organizing the internal governance around it really quickly. It's a good best practice.
No, I think that makes sense. A lot of companies are doing the AI boards per
Yeah.
se. So but I've come around to actually like them a lot, because you get a lot of different perspectives on every single use case, and I think that's required just to manage risk, because this is changing so fast right now, Alim. And I'm sure you also know this. Like every day, there's something so new that you have to learn. You are a tech company. We are an AI company ourselves. So it will get out of hand if there is no governance on top of it. I have to quickly understand. You mentioned about either building it yourself or going and outside looking to buy. How and what are the considerations that you're making, just for our listeners here, because a lot of them are in these cycles themselves, right? So how do you decide what to build versus what to buy, given that you have the tech firepower to also do a lot of things internally?
Yeah. Yeah. Our situation's probably a bit different because we do have a very large development team. And so we may have a greater bias towards building. But I think this is not any different than any other solution you would look at, whether you're going to go to a work day, or it's what is within your own competence where you can build it and it's once and done. But if you need something that's going to continuously innovate and you're going to need to have R&D dollars allocated to that, then I would say that's probably not our core competence, and that's better off that we partner. And I also think it depends on whether we're looking for something that's been tried and tested at different organizations.
Yeah.
That's really important, and that helps to manage the risk curve as well, around what's legal and what's not, and best practice has already been tested at other large companies. Those are the considerations that I would look at.
Oh, I never thought of this way, that hey, if other people have done this before, it's not just hey, it will work. It's also that you already have a risk assessment done at multiple AI boards. That's a very interesting stab at this. So, like, specifically, I'm sure there are thousands of use cases that come to every department, right? And in that particular AI board, which you are a part of as well, how do you decide what goes first? Because everyone's probably, saying that, hey, my use case first, my problem first, right? Like, so how do you decide what goes first?
Yeah, we look at impact. Is it impacting 10 people, or is it impacting thousands of people? Is there an ROI on it that's measurable? If so, can we prioritize it by that? Does it really eliminate a pain point for our coworkers or for our customers? So there's a number of different scores we assign to determine what the priority ought to be. And then does it require investment or not? Obviously, if it doesn't require an investment, then it moves up a little bit quicker. But if it does require investment, then we've got to prioritize it relative to other ROIs.
Got it. That makes sense. So basically, you're saying that, hey, if there is a problem that it solves, of course, whether it costs money or not, and then if it costs money, then if, is it solving a big problem and has a direct ROI? If it has, then you can go ahead and do it. I think it's pretty similar to what we are used to doing. It's just that the some of this gets really tough to evaluate because NA is just moving so fast, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Alim, thank you for your insights on that. I'll move on to the next part of our conversation. And as a CHRO, how do you envision your role, evolving as AI becomes more integrated into all of enterprise functions?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I go to a lot of these CHRO dinners, and it gets talked about a lot. I'm quite excited about it personally. So I think that the role has already shifted from being a steward of HR operations to more now holistic talent strategy. The next pivot, I think, this is more around architect of workforce strategy in an AI-driven world, right? So I think the future CHRO will need to lead the organization through sort of building these cultures of continuous learning, innovation, agility, but at the same time ensuring this ethical governance of AI in the workplace. I'm new into the company 6 months in, and I'm working with my senior team to redesign and position the value proposition of HR for the company. And I'm launching it in a couple of weeks, but the headline is, and I've stress tested this with the executive team and soon with the board, but the lead up to it is that we will be an AI enabled, digitally driven HR function, which is new. This is not something that I've seen, and I think that just gives you a sense of how our roles are going to evolve. And I think that HR will need to master data literacy, but at the same time, I think it's incumbent on the HR role to humanize the workplace in this AI world, because if we become too technocratic, we're going to lose some of the empathy and the relational aspect of human resources. So lots of exciting opportunity around how we leverage AI, but also balance, human dignity and values.
Makes sense. So just going a little deeper on what you just said, how should aspiring HR leaders, people who want to become a CHR, just like, what you have achieved, Alim, what should they focus on? Like, what skill set should they be building at this time, given what you just said? What's going to happen with the world of HR? It's going to become AI enabled across. So what are 2 or 3 things you'd want them to focus on as they look at building careers and becoming CHROs over the next 5 years?
Yeah, so even outside of all things AI, I've always been partial to some of the hygiene factors, which is growth mindset, curiosity, a desire to be as close to the business as possible. I've benefited from stepping out of HR and leading P&Ls or, working with startups. So you get this entrepreneurial drive and understand the causation between investment and ROI and balancing a P&L budget. So I think business acumen is so critical, as is financial acumen. So you take all that. I think now the evolution is, as I said, mastering data literacy. Is how do you leverage data and draw the right type of insights and analytics at scale? That is going to be super important. But also this cusp of changing future of work and what I said earlier around humanizing the workplace, I think is really important. We're going through so much evolution, or even just the last 3 years around the pandemic, where people are reimagining, perhaps recalculating their purpose. And so we're having to think about, what does purpose at work mean? How can technology and future of work enable different type of work experiences? So a lot of sort of traditional sociology, psychology, innovation thinking into the next CHRO.
No, that makes a lot of sense, Alim. I'd love to also hear an answer from you when I would want you to wear your president of Adidas Canada hat back up, right? And then answer the question. I think you kind of had some specific points on understanding business, understanding ROI, and like how essential business works for aspiring HR leaders, right? As the president, if you go back, I know you took a business role, right? I looked at your profile. You went up and you took a challenge and you became the PNL owner for Adidas Canada. So if you were to wear that hat back up, right? Would you recommend aspiring HR leaders to go and take that challenge at this point? I know you talked about data analytics, data literacy, talked about understanding business, but is that a recommendation you'd make to aspiring HR leaders?
100%. 100%. Look, I think it teaches you perspective. It gives you perspective of what pressures there are as a business leader. And when I took that role, I reflected on some of the things that I was pushing out from my former role, because I was leading the talent agenda. And at the end of the day, if you're a store manager at Adidas, you're selling shoes and shirts. You've got a team of young people usually, and it's fast paced. You're getting information from marketing, you're getting from finance, from risk, you're getting information from everywhere, including HR. So you don't have hours to digest something. You have maybe 15 minutes to digest something. So when HR pushes something out, it needs to be practical, it needs to be pragmatic, it needs to be to the point. And so I think that gave me a really different perspective. And ultimately, the pressures that business leaders have, it's not that they don't want to do right. Of course they don't want to do right, but in every decision, you've got to deliberate and think through the trade-offs. And sometimes you want best practice to be, but you can't at this time for a number of reasons. So the sort of judgment calls need to be made, and so policies and programs from HR need to be flexible. Doesn't mean that we lose integrity, but it needs to be flexible and pragmatic so that business leaders can use them as the right way of creating the experience that's necessary for that moment. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely, Alim. So, I resonate a lot with this because, I am a strong believer of having all of the talent function actually either come from business or be in business for a while before they can do it. Because see, and now that you're in a technology firm, you'll appreciate this like even more. Our recruitment targets, our top of the funnel targets actually flow from our recruitment targets. It's as simple as that if you think about it, right? So because are you attracting the right talent? Are you able to hire them on time? Are you able to hit your quality and quantity and timeline numbers from a talent acquisition perspective, top of the funnel? If you are, 6 months from now we'll close the deals, or even not 18 months from now we'll be doing the numbers that we've promised our board. You know what I mean? So, and unfortunately, I see even today a lot of people don't understand that very clearly. Like, I can see that flow down in a funnel. I can imagine that. I'm sure you can too, right? But unfortunately, a lot of people don't, and that's why I say, all of talent function should either come from business or go to business and then come back after doing a couple of years at least, because you understand that, hey, I need to make those hires in Q4 to be able to hit the next Q4 targets, right? Yeah. And a lot of time I think people functions downplay their role and don't understand the value of their role themselves.
100%. It's all a funnel. And I always say to recruiters, many moons ago, I was leading recruitment at Citigroup and I had a team of 900 recruiters. And one of the stats was we hired 50,000 people a year. And wow. I remember when I was presenting to the senior team, I used this quote, and I didn't think it was too profound, but it was received in a way that it changed people's perspective. And this is the quote, that In the next 5 years, we will have an opportunity to upgrade our company 250,000 times. Right? So when you think about it that way, every hire that you
Yeah.
make is an
Yep.
opportunity to upgrade your company and hit the
Raise
bottom
the
line.
bar.
It raised the
Yep.
bar. And so recruiters play such a phenomenal, powerful role in that. But you've got to influence that hiring decision. If all you're doing is posting and praying, then you're actually just keeping status quo. You're not necessarily lifting the bar. And so
Absolutely.
that's such an important point that you raise around the role that recruitment plays around the long tail.
Yeah, and not just recruitment. I think all of the people function, all of the talent function.
Great.
I think when it comes to like retaining people, making sure they have. See, everyone has some aspirations in life, and that's fine. That's how the world is, right? So making sure that I understand what Alim wants from life, and if he or she is a top performer, right? Like, what can I do to enable them and keep them happy and in the seat for not just 1 year but 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? So that's a continuous dialogue, and it's your job to make sure that the manager takes into account what Alim really wants from life, right? And deliver on that as an organization, as a manager, as an organization. A lot of time, the understanding that this is the part of the role and this is the contribution, because Alim leaving in 2 years versus leaving in 5 is going to be a hell lot of a difference from a business perspective, especially for top performers, right? And I
Yeah.
think that understanding is just like not there in a lot of people. Now I think people are there, but still a lot of folks in the talent community, I see them not being able to. They downplay their own role themselves.
Yeah.
To upgrade their own understanding and perform at that level for the organization. But anyway, coming back to, I know this is an AI Edge podcast, so let's come back to AI. My last question to you, Alim, on AI is AI's role in board level decision making, right? I think discussions are happening all around. You have an AI board specifically for AI initiatives. Now, this is the most riskiest it can get, right? So, how are you thinking of using? Are you thinking? Do you have any opinion? Any friends that are already starting to use AI for board level decision making?
Yeah. So with our board, we've got the right discussions happening around how are we using AI from a business perspective in terms of servicing our customers, sales, customer experience, etc. The conversation now is shifting more towards human capital. And how are we thinking about specifically in 3 areas of engagement, DEI, and succession, in addition to the normal board remit of compensation analysis.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, I'm making a presentation to the board in next month, and one of the topics is on engagement. So I'll be profiling how we've used AI around sentiment analysis and creating personas. So in a way, just shifting back right to the conversation we just had around how do we get to know at the individual level and build personas, just as you would in marketing for customers.
Yep, exactly.
What are the personas within our organization? And AI now lets us do this at scale, right? So I'm curious on how that will be received. I think that boards are also cautious, rightly, around making sure that we're taking a risk-based approach. But that is not a different lever than what management also wants to. We want to make sure we're innovating, but taking intelligent risk and sort of creating a blast radius around, so that we're not betting the farm. We're experimenting, and they're curious to see how we can learn and innovate.
Amazing. Thank you so much for taking out the time to do this with us, Alim. I think this has been extremely insightful. We talked about a lot of things, AI, and then outside of AI as well. But really, really, thank you so much for taking out the time and doing this with us, and for our audience as well.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Have a good day.